Oh, that's obnoxious.
Don't stand there.
Yeah, that was bad. Everyone, thanks for coming tonight. My name's Jake. So if you didn't get a Wi-Fi card on your way in or a survey, those are just right out there on the table. I have a couple pens out there too if you need them. If we run out of pens, I can go grab more. I think everyone make sure they signed in on their way in. I don't know how else you would get in here. But if you didn't or somehow missed it, it's just right outside on the security table. And just make sure to sign in either on your way out if you didn't do that. We still have plenty of food, so go ahead and grab as much as you want. Restrooms are right out these classrooms to the right, and then there's this little hallway that will be on your left if you need to use the restrooms. But yeah, if you have any questions, I'll be in and out, and feel free to go ahead and grab them. Thanks.
Yeah, so make sure everybody knows that recording this, my fancy video gear over there, mobile phone, smartphone. But yeah, so I'll post that up on probably on YouTube, link in the Meetup notes. And yeah, I'm Todd Hale. I host the Ionic group on Meetup. I have to talk just because of my interest in Ionic, not because of expertise. I'm working on getting there, but very interested in it. I'm excited about it. And I work here at Xactware. Been here a long, long time. And in fact, show of hands, who all is an Xactware employee? These two in the back. Okay, great. Great. And we're all developers, right? And Ken's also project management. And yeah, if we go around real quick, just want to do a quick introduction, 5-10 seconds, who you are, what you do, why you're here. Just that'll help us going forward with presentations. So if you don't mind.
Yeah, Todd Hansman. I work at a company called Mobile Central Alpine, just as an architect, developer guy.
Jacob Hansman, I'm his son, and I work for him.
Awesome. As it should be.
Developers too?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, Lane Stevens, CTO Mobile.
All right, great. Larry?
Larry Mortensen, Xactware. Alberto Garza, I work for Xactware. I'm also a part-time instructor in tech. I teach Angular, and we also teach Ionic. It's mainly the reason I'm here. I don't do Ionic professionally, but I try to learn as much as I can to teach it.
Josh Diaz, I work at a company called iServe out here in Lehigh as a front-end developer. I'm here because I like to learn things. And food is cool too. So.
All right, Clint?
Henderson, I'm a developer here at Xactware. I also teach part-time at MATC. Most of what I do is centered around AWS, a lot of DevOps type stuff. So haven't written server-side code for quite a while. So that's me.
I'm Ken Severn. I work here at Xactware. I'm a former developer and currently doing some agile project management, but have an interest in just being familiar with the technology to help with the project management and possibly doing some other stuff.
Do you guys officially have an Ionic project going, or is it still just
No.
proof of concept?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably stay that way for a while, I'm guessing.
Okay. Yeah, good. All right, Larry.
Yeah, I'm Larry Ruff. I'm the COO in Voodoo. We divide up your checking account into electronic envelopes that you can spend from, and it's an app that is done with Ionic. So.
And if you look at our code night notes from last week, I put some links on there for Voodoo and some other stuff Larry's done. Other stuff we talked about. Yeah. All right, Todd.
Todd Fisher, worked at TouchMD. I do C#, Angular, TypeScript stuff. So I just like to learn new things. So.
Yeah, great.
Jerry Cullimore, I work full stack at Digital Guardian, Angular front end, Java back end.
Great.
Okay, Brady Ashby, I work at UVU, front-end developer. Just like to learn.
I'm Cory MacArthur. I currently work at Sworkit. It was an app that built off of Ionic. And we'll present today, so
Yeah.
you'll hear more about me.
Yeah, good, great. Appreciate it. And if anybody has any questions as we go along, just raise your hand, jump in, say hey. I might not see you or whatever. Or same with the other presenters. Just jump in and ask questions. I've got a fire hose presentation here for those that are newer to Ionic, just to go through so that you get some of the vocabulary down and understand the different pieces. It's just a simple list. It's got a bunch of links. I put links in the Meetup notes, and I've also got a printout here if you want to follow along or take notes or something.
Has anyone been able to connect to the internet? It's supposed to be the guest network. So.
Anybody connect on the guest network?
Can try the TLS certificate error.
Is it?
I'm just not getting anything, so I'm
Yeah, get a prompt.
Yeah, thanks. Grab Jay.
I'm going to prompt or anything.
Or go straight to help desk.
Yeah, I'll go straight to this.
All right. Okay. Get you online. Hard to do what you do without connection. All right, so Ionic. All right, this is pulled from their website. Ionic is the beautiful, free, open source mobile SDK for developing native and progressive web apps with ease. I almost feel like I need to say that with some kind of utopian voice. Ionic is the beautiful, free, open things. It is free to build and deploy based on the MIT license. So their help toolkit, you never have to pay a fee to them for all the tools and the code that you use there. Fees would come in just in the app stores when you're ready to submit an app. So, and if anybody has any questions or clarifications or anything like that from your experience, chime in. Ionic CLI. You can do a lot of this without the CLI, but you know you're going to need to get in and learn the CLI, and all of their tutorials and everything take you through everything you need to do. It's the command line interface, and there's a lot of power built in it. It hooks into a lot of other different tools, like the Cordova command line tools, and they've made some things even simpler and easier. If you use the Ionic command, it does several commands, for you in the process of building or creating a project. And those actually install separately. If you're familiar with, like the CLI it's an executable you install on your machine. It's got to be available in your path and everything so that you can run it. The Ionic as a package, if you're building out an app, if you're building from scratch, then you need to npm install the Ionic code into your project to use it to build an app. So that if you can understand the two different things, Ionic CLI, it's the executable, help you set up your project and build it, and then the Ionic code is the other part that you install into your project. Ionic is built on Cordova. It's an Apache Cordova project, and that has a whole bunch of plugins to allow you to connect. Well, it's also the JavaScript interface to access the device plugins for all the device features like the camera, the microphone, the geolocation, the person's contacts, the calendar, all those things that apps can do. Every once in a while they'll pop up and ask you for permission to use that part of the device. They're all accessible here through the Cordova layer. And then PhoneGap, Adobe, as far as I understand it, Adobe is driving the development of Cordova, but they also have PhoneGap that includes a whole bunch of build tools and deployment tools, a lot like Ionic does. And so they layer on a whole bunch of services for you to use in addition. They have a big PhoneGap day. They hosted it here a couple of years ago. right here at the Adobe in Lehigh. And then I think the next one coming up is over in London or something like that. But if you look, you can look up PhoneGap there, see more about that. So Angular, AngularJS, two terms. Who here is not familiar with Angular, AngularJS? Probably more than half of you are, but if everybody is, I don't want to go into a lot of details about that. As I mentioned here in the notes, AngularJS is what they're calling version 1, which is built on JavaScript. And then Angular is for versions 2, 4, and 5, which is built on TypeScript. And then something else to know about it is that NG and NGX are commonly used prefixes or terms for Angular tools, conferences, other things. NGConf, right here in Salt Lake City every year, huge Angular conference. And yeah, so when you see NG, that's what it represents as Angular.
Why?
Why? Someone decided at one point, I read a few things about it, but it's just, they just wanted to shorten it down, and I guess they didn't want ang. And if you look at their tags, Angular creates tags for you to use in your HTML. ng repeat, ng if, they have a whole bunch, and ng dash is their prefix for all of those. And for some reason, when they first started out, I guess they decided they didn't want to go with ang, A-N-G. They wanted to keep it brief. They went with ng. So. Yeah.
So people remember it and they have conversations about why is that NG.
Yeah. But yeah, just know that those are referring to Angular-based items. TypeScript now, as they say on TypeScriptLang.org, it's a type superset of JavaScript, compiles to plain JavaScript, and it just introduces typings, which is super helpful in code validation and in autocomplete if you're working and coding. And then it also comes with a bunch of ES6 or advanced features that will compile down to ES5. And so there's a lot to use in it. And Angular 2 and up are highly dependent on TypeScript. They say there's ways to do it without it, but it's all the documentation, all the samples, all the tutorials are all focusing on TypeScript with Angular. Now let's see, and I'll just re-emphasize that TypeScript is used, TypeScript is used for Angular 2, 4, 5, and Ionic 2 and 3 projects. So TypeScript is required to know. And again, I put this list together just so you know what you need to do, especially using the most modern Ionic version of Ionic. And it's based on TypeScript. PWA is a progressive web application, and we covered that 6 months ago in one of the presentations. I put a link to the slides on that. It's a great technology. If you're going to release to the web at all, and you want, especially for mobile, it's helpful. It's helpful for all, even desktop websites, but look up PWA and learn about that. And Ionic now, if you create an Ionic project with the command line, it will include the code you need to make it a progressive web app. I think there's one little block of code you have to uncomment, and then you have to put some details in one of the config files. But it's all there. So when you start looking stuff up, you can just switch over to your code and find those files and edit them as you need to. Get platforms. When you're building out Ionic, you're going to build out for several mobile platforms, or you're able to. You may decide you're just going to target Android or just iPhone or whatever. Or like we do up at Exact Analysis, we only release to the web. And we're a progressive web app, but we've got mobile web application. It's done in Ionic 1, so it's built on JavaScript. So the platforms refers to where you're planning to deploy it to. Now, Ionic Native. Let me scroll down here. Okay, in fact, I'm going to go to that one. Got that highlighted here. Let's see if it'll get you there. Nice, link's not working. Yeah, every link's can work. All right, Ionic Native. I'm gonna see if I still got it here. We'll look it up. You got to see the list. And I've got no connection. I'm corporate here. Not even on the guest network. Resetting stuff.
So they could be the one using passwords.
Okay, well, let's just go back and talk about it then. Ionic Native includes a whole bunch of wrappers that you can include in your project for each of the device features you want to access.
Hey, really quick, guys. So those usernames and passwords that you have, replace it with Verisk, capital V, Lehigh, capital L, 1 through 30. So whatever number you have on there, just do the Verisk Lehigh
For the name and the password.
and for the username and the password. It's the same network, guest network, but that should get connected. Turn it off the wrong ones.
How do you spell Verisk?
Verisk.
I thought there was a Y. No, that's not.
No.
So I still don't
Well, I
get the
think so.
prompt when I try.
So let me see, you said,
Oh, yeah, we weren't even getting the prompt.
yeah.
It was throwing a security error on the login page.
So you said Verisk Lehigh what?
So if I hit guest, I don't even get a prompt to. It's a wrong password.
Whatever number you got on that.
Oh, okay, and then the numbers you've got.
Yeah, I'm not going to use this.
You just have to join. Yeah. Is it maybe like remember? Maybe, but it usually would still pop up something.
Yeah, mine doesn't pop in, should be there.
He's never been here.
Hey, look at that, my corporate Wi-Fi just.
Yeah, so there we go. Right there.
Okay, so Ionic Native. There we go.
That's what we got. Yeah, mine says, I'm just trying on my phone, just,
Maybe try to do it through.
and it says sign, it spins right here when the Wi-Fi sign in.
Oh,
Kicks out something else.
No, that's time down.
That's something else. So, yeah, so it just sits there and spins.
Yeah, you're fine, I
Yeah, you see.
just say, well,
Oh, he's got it.
pause for a minute while he's working on it.
Download your slides.
I'll stop me when you figure it out, if you have more instructions for that.
So yeah,
Yeah,
try through Firefox if you guys aren't already using Firefox. At least just authenticate. That works.
so if you look down the list of packages here in Ionic Native,
We use
these are all the smartphone features you have access to through Ionic Native.
IE.
3D touch action sheet, so the things pop up from the bottom.
I'm checked to the exact.
Fingerprint off. There's a couple of Android specific ones, but everything else, well, most everything else is available for both iOS and Android. And then a lot of them have Windows support too, but not all of them. And if you click through one of them that you're interested in, it will it'll tell you what it supports. So right there, supported platforms, Android, browser, iOS, and Windows. So if you import this badge plugin, you write code just into that plugin. So you write it once, and it will work for Android, browser, iOS, and Windows. So it's every feature that we see over on the left is done that way. Bluetooth, low energy, brightness, broadcast, cameras. Yeah, really, you spend some time and look through this stuff if you're building Ionic apps. And there's pretty good sample code for each of them. There's flashlight, you have access to that.
So what's the advantage to writing native code then?
To use Ionic Native?
Well, like, why would you write once in Swift and once in Kotlin? When you could just write once in Ionic Native? Is there a performance hit with the states?
Yeah, there is. There is. It's manageable depending on your project and which version you're using of Ionic and Angular and other packages that you're including. And it's like an app. It really mirrors like an Angular app startup. If you're familiar with Angular and how it has to load and load a whole lot of assets, later versions they're doing more with lazy loading and partitioning and code splitting and all these things. But that's still kind of on the cusp right now.
Okay.
So you get those kind of hits.
Okay.
Yeah, Albert.
So my understanding is that if you're trying to do graphics intensive apps, like everything, or something really, really resource intensive, then you want to go with hybrid, like Ionic, should be able to do it from
Yeah, CRUD apps for sure, which
What's a CRUD?
is
create, what is it, read?
create, read, update, delete. It means basically a lookup app, like you have a list of things and people manage lists or whatever. But yeah, and I also like to say that anything that you can run in a mobile web browser is a great candidate to package up and put in the App Store. As long as you there's UI involved too. You don't want to put just a lousy web looking application, package it up with an app store.
Yeah, just one more question would be, Angular all compiles down to JavaScript. So if you have this compiling down to JavaScript, you now have a mobile processor, it's a mobile RAM that's running JavaScript, which seems
Yeah, it runs in a web view.
the best idea.
Yeah, it runs in a web view.
Okay.
Yeah, so the like you said, the graphic intensive or processor intensive apps, you're not going to want to do it in there. But you look at apps like in Voodoo, they've demoed that in here, and they've got animations and scrolling and everything like that, and it's very responsive. I mean, it's running like a native app. But if it was doing a whole bunch more crunching, number crunching in the background, that would bog it down because it is running in WebView.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
Some things to do.
All right, let me jump back here. I'm gonna rip through the rest of this pretty quickly. See, so Ionic Creator, that's a website that you go to and create a free account. They have a tier. You can pay if you're gonna do a few extra projects or use some of their advanced features, but it lets you drag and drop and create apps, and then you can export that code to your computer and enhance it further. So it's pretty nice for prototyping and UI design. But once you export it and start working on it, you can't re-import it back in. It's a one-way thing. So just know that. Ionic Pro, sign up for that. That gives you some of these other tools like DevApp and Deploy and other things. So sign up for an Ionic Pro account. It's at dashboard.ionicjs.com, and you create an app, and then you go to your command line. You can link your app to that app on your website, and then you can do some pushes, and you can do like you run the dev app on your. We'll jump down to these two here. Ionic View is how you share your app with friends. You can send them an app code link, and they can install Ionic View, put in your little link code, and it's kind of a shell that runs Ionic apps. It's for getting feedback early on in your development process. You want to show off your app without building that in the App Store. DevApp is what you use as a developer, and you don't have to be tethered. You don't have to have it hooked to your laptop anymore to do that. You just, if you're on the same Wi-Fi network, you do an Ionic serve, And if you have it linked to your Ionic Pro account, it will broadcast on Wi-Fi and find your app. They'll find each other, and it will pop up in the list of apps, and you can tap on it, view it, change your code, and it does live reload. And so
You have that open on your phone?
yeah,
As well as your.
Yep.
Oh, that's.
you can have it on both Android, iOS,
Yeah.
and
That's so cool.
yeah.
How many devices does it have a limit?
I don't know. I don't know.
And that's bundled with Pro?
Yeah, it's part of the Pro.
Just available standalone?
You download the app just from the App Store, but it only works through an Ionic Pro account. And it says Pro, but it sounds like you pay money. They have a free tier. So you can do that without paying anything. I found it's a little bit flaky, especially when, like my laptop, I'm wired and Wi-Fi, and my phone has got data and Wi-Fi. Sometimes they don't hook up, and I have to shut down both the data and the network so they're on both on Wi-Fi. They have to be on the same network. Sometimes they don't find each other. So there's a few little tricks to that, but it's really slick, really nice. And I'll pause for a minute here. This is my son Benjamin, and he is going to do some chair massages. We did this last time, but I'm going to wrap up in the next 5 minutes, and then we'll have a sign-up list that he'll do a 10-minute massage, work your shoulders. So yeah, that's complimentary. Don't worry about tipping. I got it covered. And what's that?
That's the roof over your head, right?
Yes, yeah. Okay, and
What happens when you use this app?
so deploy, that's something you gotta learn about too. That I haven't used it yet. I went to their tutorial and I'm still having problems with it. But fundamentally what you do is you release your app, put it in the App Store, and then if you have changes and you have Ionic deployed in your app, you can push out changes to your app without going to the App Store again. Next time the user runs the app, it'll pop up and say, there are updates. You want to update now? You hit that, and it does an internal thing and updates it, gets your latest code. That's slick. I like that. That one, I believe, requires a paid Ionic Pro account.
No,
It doesn't?
no. If you want to do like 1,000 updates, like if you're on a
Okay.
production app, then you do have to pay. But we used it for Voodoo for development, and it was awesome.
Yeah, so there's a tier.
Yep.
And you can do so many updates for free. Yeah, that's great. Worldwide Slack. Here's your support channels right here. Worldwide Slack. There's a separate, this is a sign up link, and then there's the actual Slack link after you're signed up. There's some confusion on the internet about how to get in. But this is the link to get you registered and in there. Ionic Forum, that's just out on their website. You can go log in and ask questions there. Ionic Market, starters, plugins, and themes. Go out there and take a look at their stuff. There's a whole bunch of great stuff. Help you build out your app. You know, and some of them are free, simple starters. Some of them you can pay $50. You get a really nice built-out application. You just gotta customize it and make it your own. npms.io. This is a way to find other plugins for Angular. Like I was looking for a timer the other day, just something that does a countdown, but not numbers. I wanted to spin one. Anyways, found a couple out there that we could use, and it's Angular, so it will move it into your Ionic 3 project.
Just install those within
Yeah, just like an Angular project. Xcode and command line tools. On the Apple side, you need their dev tool, which is called Xcode. And it comes with some command line tools. They probably prompt you to install them automatically when you run Xcode. Android Studio and Android SDK. You can actually build on a Mac. You can do both. You can build Android apps and Mac apps, but not vice versa. Windows can't build a Mac app. So, dev mode. Okay, these are just some different terms. Usually when you're working and developing in Ionic, it's not doing a full compile and full build and all the optimizations that you want to do when you release. And so that's a dev mode. It makes it easier for debugging, and they got some really great debug messages that will pop up in the browser and give you the console in the actual page. So there's a lot of great stuff there. Prod mode, production mode, do a build command, and it does all the optimizations, size and performance. Deploy to device, hook up your phone and actually build the app and put it on the device. So not through a shell like the dev app or the Ionic View. It's an actual app deployed to your device. So that's deploying an actual app. It's narrowed down to the App Store. And then there's a bunch of tricks for signing your application when you're ready to submit to the App Store. And that has to do with, you just have to verify and sign your app for authorized submission. It's a security thing and authorization thing so they know that it's coming from you. And in the submission process, I put a nice little emoticon into there, emoji. There's a lot of hoops to jump through on that step, but they walk you through it on the Ionic site. So just follow those and get into that, and you'll figure it out and get it into. Once you get everything set up, then putting out updates is a lot easier than the first time. Live reload. That's when while you're developing, you make changes in your app. It automatically picks up the changes. That's something we can understand. It comes automatically, and then I threw in this command line code right here. Ionic serve -lrc. That's 3 options. First one's called lab, and it loads your browser, and you can choose all 3 views for iOS, Android, and Windows, all in the same web page. So you can see that they're different. They each follow the different platform style guides. Windows version looks like a Windows app. The iOS version looks like an Apple app. Android. Let's see. Do you have another question? No. All right. Better whip through the rest of this. Okay, Stencil. Cory's going to talk a bunch about that. I'm just going to gloss over that. It's the future of Ionic, and a lot of things coming on the web. That's the way I see it, and other people have commented online. They have their own Slack channel. You have to learn about servers when you're developing an app. There's a few apps that don't use any servers. They're just static, have data in them, but to build anything real powerful, you're going to be talking to servers and storing data and saving data. And then I put 5 courses on here that I've really liked on Udemy related to Ionic and Angular. And then they've got their big link on the Ionic site for getting started. They've got like 5, so you can install several tools to get there, but it's really simple and easy. All right, and breeze through the last part of that. Any questions about Ionic terminology, vocabulary, concepts? Yeah. Todd.
So with the Windows, is it Windows 10 or Windows Phone? What does it actually?
Yeah. Yes.
Windows 10.
I'm
not sure.
Doesn't the store serve both? Who knows? I haven't.
Universal Windows platform. So 8 and on, including phone.
Yeah.
That's dead, but
The newest phone.
It's dead, but yeah. Right. So more for tablets. The market is tablets for
Yeah, you'll sell the market with whatever app you put on there.
Yeah, so, yeah. All right, what else? Someone else had a hand? Question?
Yeah, the fees involved in publishing to stores. Is it just a standard Apple developer fee?
Yeah.
Developer fee?
I think it's $99 a year for Apple, or $25. Is it lifetime for Google?
Yeah, it's really cheap.
Yeah, that's the latest I've heard and seen. So yeah, that's the fee. And a lot of pulling out your hair and everything else to get your app ready and actually submit it to the store. So, all the fun work involved. All right. I'm all done wrapping up, and we have you next on the list? I'm
Yeah.
drawing a blank.
Yeah, that works for me.
Come up and hook in, and then Ben, you have a sign-up list?
I'm working on it.
Oh,
It's not, I'm not getting any signal in here, so I'm trying to pull it up.
yeah, okay. All right. Oh, we'll get him going in a minute.
Alrighty. How many of you guys have heard of StencilJS?
Just now.
Just now? Has anybody dove into it, tried it out, read any documentation? No? Good. Because I started on Monday. And I asked Todd to have me present today, so I had a deadline to try to finish it. So what I want to do is go through a little bit, I'll tell you a little bit about me, and then to show a presentation on what Stencil is, and then hopefully we can code a little bit too in Stencil. So I've been in product design for 8 years. First I started out designing physical products, I worked in an engineering firm for a while, industrial design firm, then worked at Qualtrics, worked at Lucid as a UX designer. I was a co-founder of Voodoo here with Larry. I left Voodoo in April and joined Sworkit. They're poster child of Ionic, because they have millions of active users, monthly active users. I love creating products and I like designing and coding, so I do both design and development. Here's my kids. This was taken yesterday. I got a 6-year-old, a little 5-month-old, and a 3-year-old. They're fun. So here are the apps that I have on the App Store. Voodoo's on the App Store. Phases Scorekeeper is a simple app that I made for my father-in-law. It's just a way to track a simple card game that he invented. And Sworkit is the team that I just joined, so I contributed to this. I certainly didn't build this app. But one of the reasons they hired me was to rewrite the Sworkit app, which is in Ionic 1, in the next version. So that'll happen Q1 of 2018. So we might write it in Ionic 4, if Ionic 4 is out by then. Stencil, we'll see. I hope Ionic 4 will be ready by then. So what is Stencil? We're going to jump into a presentation that the Stencil team actually posted. So rather than me creating my own, I'm going to go through their presentation. Stencil is basically a compiler for web components. So to start out, let's talk about what web components are. Rather than ask you, does anyone know what web components are? Like, have a good description that might come to mind? Yeah, go ahead.
Like everything that you want to do with Angular or React to create like a visual element that you can add to the DOM, but without Angular or React, just with normal browser stuff.
Exactly. So in the browser right now, you can do divs, h1 tags, p tags, and the browser will read them and render them, right? If you tried to add a Cory-MacArthur tag, like nothing would happen, right? Unless you used Angular. The benefit of web components is that you're going to be able to build your own components like that, and browsers will be able to read them. So basically, because it's a web component, these have started. Web components started in the last few years, but modern browsers are starting to support them. So now they have like compliance terms for like how to build a proper web component. So now browsers are starting to support them, and because of that, that's why Ionic's finally jumping on board and saying, hey, let's start building Ionic in web components, because now all browsers are starting to support them. So now we have Chrome and Safari that have good polyfills that work with web components, and in the future, it'll roll out to all browsers as I catch this up. So custom elements, as we talked about, if you've built an AngularJS or Angular, you could write your own component, you can name it whatever you wanted, and then you can pass in attributes that then renders something from a template, an HTML template, or add some conditional logic and things like that. A custom element example, this is what a web component might look like. Rather than go into that, I'm going to kind of skip some of these. So Stencil, what Stencil is a compiler to build web components. So this was the hardest concept for me to understand even after watching their whole announcement videos, like what Stencil actually is. It's not going to replace, it may replace Angular, but it doesn't have to replace Angular. It doesn't have to replace React or your framework of choice, because Stencil is not a framework. It's a compiler that takes your code and transpiles it into vanilla JavaScript components that then can be read because they're web component, because they are web components. So, and some of this will become more clear as I show you some examples of what that looks like. But feel free to interrupt me and stop with any questions as we go. So as they say here, you can build your own custom elements that are part of this web component spec that all browsers will hopefully read one day. It's not a framework. The output is not. It's just compliance, so that you have the ability to do these custom elements. And created by the Ionic framework team. So Ionic is awesome. Like just because the Ionic team built it is one of the reasons I trust in this compiler. And Ionic 4 and up is going to be built on Stencil. So what that means for Ionic is that in V4, they plan on opening it up to not just Angular. So right now, you can only write Ionic 3 apps in TypeScript and in Angular. But because they're going this web component route, you could write an Ionic app in React if you wanted to, or in vanilla JavaScript if you wanted to, or you could probably even write it just in Stencil if you wanted to, if you don't need more of those advanced features that those other libraries offer. So Stencil is very performant. They showed this demo of what Stencil looks like updating thousands of nodes on the DOM, and it's very fast because it's in pure JavaScript. It's not having to load. I think Angular, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think Angular is like pushing 0.5 MB, like just the framework. So just to load Angular takes a long time, whereas Stencil is in the kilobytes. It's like 50 kilobytes or something like that. So it's very cheap, like loading wise. It's familiar, interoperable, stable, it's good, it's awesome. So here's what a Stencil component looks like. So it's written in TSX. So if you guys have if you ever developed something in JSX or React, right? That's JavaScript with some HTML elements inside of it. TSX is TypeScript with some HTML elements inside of it. So you see, just like if you've done this in React, there's a render function or render that gets called, and what it returns is actually some HTML. So it looks a little different than if you're used to Angular. It's going to look a little different than that. And if you're used to React, you'll notice there's some other things that React doesn't have, like these component tags and your import statements that you are familiar with Angular. So it's almost like Angular and React came together and had a baby, and it's awesome. So because it's in TypeScript, you get types, which really helps you develop faster and develop good, clean code. But just to walk through this, it's in TypeScript again, so you can import. You're importing these from Stencil, a component or a property. On this component decorator, you can you basically give it any name you want for your tag. So if you were to put a tag of my name in there, it'll render this component, right? And then what they use, you can do a lot of styling inline if you want. I know a lot of React guys like that. They like having all their styles in one place. However, it's also built for Sass, so it can reference a style sheet that then gets compiled, and rather than doing a shadow DOM like on that specific element, they just scope it to your specific element by adding, I'll show you this in an example later, but by adding the my name tag, you can then add all your styles to that, and it'll just be applied to the my name. the my name attribute. It's built for SAS, so it'll compile your SAS, or you're wondering if you can do less, or I don't think it supports less. But SAS is just like CSS, so if you wanted to, you could just load the SAS file and write it all in CSS. Or you could do it in line, right, like a lot of the React guys will want to do. They have virtual DOM, so anything that you update is going to update really, really fast. They're lazy loaded by default. So what's really cool about this for Ionic, because currently, if you're building an Ionic app, Ionic 3, you're loading not only Angular, but you're loading the entire component library for Ionic. So you're loading all the components at once in the backend, right? But because these are lazy loaded, you don't have to wait for all that to load unless it's on the page. So once it's on the page, it'll pull the necessary code for that to run. And it's reactively programmed. So it's high performance, JSX, very similar because it's TSX, right? It's pretty much the same thing as JSX, but it's with TypeScript. And you can also do server-side rendering stuff with it, which I haven't even attempted to do. So on every component, these are the decorators that you can use. Each one of them requires a component decorator. You need to declare what tag you want to detect in the DOM and what to do with it, right? Properties are things like your attributes that you want to add, and they can be dynamic as well, that gets passed in. You'll use state for things that you want to, basically what happened, state is very similar to a property, but what happens if the property changes, so if you're listening to a state attribute and it changes, it'll run the render function again. So if I want to show and hide something, I'll put it under a state decorator so that as that property changes, the DOM re-renders. You can emit events so that other parent elements or sibling elements can react to what happens to this element. And you can also listen for changes from other things that are emitted from other elements. And then you also have the elements, so you can do some DOM manipulation as well. Alrighty, so let's do some demo. Is anything else here? Yeah, let's just do it. Any questions so far?
Do you have to use Stencil with Ionic?
You don't, no. In fact, a lot of the stuff, if you follow Stencil on Twitter or if you join their Slack team, a lot of guys are just building Stencil apps for fun with nothing but Stencil. And Ionic actually isn't supported yet. Like they say, yeah, you can try it, but it's like alpha. So I tried some stuff with it and it's not fun. So don't try Ionic with it. Okay, so change their logo. It went blue, brown. Okay, so here I created this little budget app. I'm creating a budget app.
Make the font
as
bigger.
This demo. Yeah, let's zoom in on here. So.
Is there a way we can just lower the lights?
Yeah. You know how to do those? There's a smart panel back there to control everything.
Before I jump into this, I want to show you guys this. If you want to follow along too, is anybody interested in coding, or do you just want to watch code? If you want to, go to StencilJS.com, and you'll clone down a repo, and you'll run npm install and then npm start. It is so fast to get up and running on a little app like this. And their demo just has one component in there that then you can manipulate and do things with. So I'm going to explain kind of this little structure that I've created here. Like I said, I started this on Monday, so this code happened today, so it's really scrappy, but it works. So I'll run you through this, and then we can try to add to it. Currently, I don't use properties on here. So in your index file, right now, all it's going to have inside of it is your main component, and I think their default one is my name component. But just like in Angular, you can nest components inside of each other. So inside my budget app component, I've actually nested another component called transaction card, right? So I'm tracking these little transactions and I have a lot of data on these transactions that I want to show. So to begin, I have a component that has this tag of budget app, right? I showed you that inside my index HTML. It's just looking for this budget app. I don't have any properties on it. I don't have any state on it. And I can then add data to it, like this transactions array. In TypeScript, if you're not familiar with TypeScript, you declare the type here, which is actually optional, so I can take this off. But if I were to add an array and say that each array item has to be an object, it'll pass. But if I say something like, if I start being more specific and say this object should only have a string or a name and it's a string, now you'll see that, hey, you'll get an error. This is why I'm pitching TypeScript on this one, why this is so cool. I can see here that this string amount number is not assignable to type name string. So you can see that because I've declared what this type should be and it's something different, it'll throw an error and tell you gotta fix it, right? For the sake of this demo, I just say, I don't care what these are, every one of these objects can be different. So each one of these little transactions, I have a name, an amount, like a budget it's assigned to, and a date that the transaction happened. And then inside my render function, remember the render function gets called as the component launches, as it loads, and then anytime state changes, the render function will get called. So I can return, here's where it gets a little weird. If you have never done any JSX before, you return things in a parenthesis, and then you can throw in elements like DOM elements like a div. In JSX or React, you can only return one element. In fact, if I do it here, it'll also give me an error. It'll say like, we're only expecting like one element coming out of here. But if because this is TSX, we can actually like pass in an array of elements, which is, again, it's weird, like we're returning DOM, right, rather than returning JavaScript. But I'm just going to return one element. That's most of the time what you want to do anyway. And to enter into to type like pure JavaScript, you'll do this with a single open curly. I can then take my transactions, which is referenced up here, and I can map over them. So a map is like a for each loop, so it's looping through all of my transactions. And I pass in a transaction, and then with my fat arrow function, I can then return some more DOM, right? So the DOM I'm returning is a transaction card with a name attribute, and again, I'm using curly brackets here to give me the transaction name. The amount is transaction amount. The budget is a transaction budget, and the date is that date. So I want to show you what this looks like if I were to just do, let's just do one transaction card element. So rather than looping through these, I probably should have started my demo this way, sorry. I can call this, the name of my transaction is Costco. The amount is like $33.
Wouldn't be Costco then.
Yeah.
It's $33.
$330.
There you go.
Right. There you go. The budget is groceries, right? The date that this transaction happened was whatever, 14, right? And because I'm running this npm start, I'm running this through Stencil. It live reloads. You can see here in my terminal that it's done. It'll watch for changes again. And here's my element that just says Costco. If I change this to Costco wholesale, and save it, it'll refresh, live reload, show that there as well. Right, so I can do this through strings. I can hard code them in there, or like I did before, I can map over an array of elements and insert them dynamically. So these are all inserted dynamically, right? Oh, I need to map over it. Yeah, I deleted too much. So since I'm mapping over the transactions, I can dynamically insert them there.
So this piece of the TSX file, that's just all JSX right there, and then
This part in the return,
yeah.
yes,
So it looks super
it's
familiar with like React.
yeah. So React is in JSX. This is TSX because it's in TypeScript. There's a few things that you can do more with stencils TSX than you can with the JSX, but for the most part they look very similar.
Are some of
So
the things
you'll
the
feel
same,
right
like
at home.
class name, like those types of things, like you have to have different.
So you don't in TypeScript. So let me show you what my transaction card looks like, right? Because for this transaction card to show up, I need to like declare all of these properties, right? And then I also added a state change, which I'll show you in a second. So I import my component property. I do some state change. I have a method as well. So you import the elements that you need, right? I have my transaction card. That's what we used previously to like create all of our transactions. And this should be, I guess the class name doesn't matter, but transaction card. And then here I declare these types again. So my name is a string. I could set a default. So if there was no transaction name, I could set that to no name, but it'll be overridden by anything that comes through that property.
So just a quick question.
Yeah.
Do you have to label the prop for it? What if you didn't have prop name? Could you pass in name?
If you
or
don't-
whatever?
Yeah, if you don't have a prop on there, I don't. Let's see if it throws an error. I don't think it will throw an error, but it won't render it.
Yeah.
So if I were to add another one here, like
Test.
test equals Cory, right?
Right.
It'll error here because it knows that hey, this property doesn't exist,
Okay.
which is really nice. Again, this is
So that's
it's a TypeScript feature,
Yeah.
right? So it's saying hey, you're trying to do something that the
Yeah.
element you created doesn't have. However, it doesn't throw an error over here at all.
Gotcha.
Right, so this is just a lot of the TypeScript functionality is just to help you versus like keep it versus prevent you from compiling. So yes, you do need to declare these properties if you want them to be piped in somewhere, right? So I have all my. I actually don't use the color one, a budget. I don't use the pending either. Maybe I do. Oh, I use color, but I just didn't show it on the demo. And then let's just ignore these for now. So inside my transaction, I want to be able to. I can use classes, right? So if I look at my transaction card SAS, I have this is how I styled it. I have these show details. So you add classes just like you would in normal HTML. And so to your question, you don't actually have to use class name. In
So if you
JSX,
did-
you have to declare like this class name, where in TSX you don't.
Okay.
And the cool thing here too is because you can basically inject your JavaScript anywhere. So for this class, I was this might not even be the proper way to do it. I was just trying to figure out a way to add and remove a class dynamically. So what I did was I added a default class of show details, and then I added a second class called open. But because this is just like JavaScript would be. So what I did here was it said if this.expand is true, give me the open class. Add open into this class. If not, make it nothing. And I did the same thing down here for details. So I wanted to add and remove this class for open. So if I click on one of these transactions, I can add and remove a class so I can get some dynamic moving or adjustments inside of this component. And so each one of these components operates on their own, right? They all have their own scope. When I open one, it doesn't open all of them. But I'm able to add this click event that then adds the class and removes the class and shows and hides the data. So the thing that is a little weird for me, this is the hardest part for me, was adding click events, and we're about out of time. Adding click events to an element because I'm very used to Angular, which is your parentheses, click equals, and then you call your function. For you to do this in TSX, you do an on-click, and then you add your open curly here, And the convention is to name this handler so that I call it a toggle handler, so that it helps you understand which function is actually being called from you, right? So the toggle handler calls this toggle handler method, and then sets this state of expand, right? Toggles the state on and off. And you can see here I've set this state here. If I don't call this a state, if I just call this a prop, it won't get updated. Well, the render function won't get called unless you have it inside the state. So you want to use the state decorator here. So anytime that state changes, this render function is called again, and so you'll see that's where it can run through here and see that, oh, expand is now open, or expand is now true, so we're going to add the class of open. And then if it's expanded, you can also do this again, your little if-then statement. If expand is true, I'm going to return, here's my return statement, all inside the parentheses again. I'm going to return these 3 DOM elements, which is, again, a little weird. I'm returning an array of DOM. And if it's false, if this expand is false, I'm just going to return this span. In fact, I can add something to it like element is closed. That way it looks, that way you can tell that actually something happened here. Maybe. Oh, there it is. That's just, I fixed the height. That's why I did that. Poor coding. But yeah, so you can treat this DOM just like you would JavaScript. Any questions so far? Clear as mud? Interesting? I pushed back a lot on React, but for some reason, because the Ionic guys did it, I'm like excited about it. So I think it's cool. I think that's all the time I have for demo today. We got another guy speaking.
I didn't see up at the top. Constructor function right
there isn't a constructor function. I'm trying to think what the equivalent of that would be in here. I think that would happen just before you return. So anything above the DOM would be part of the constructor, because that render function calls gets called when you launch when you go to render the element, right? And so it wouldn't happen inside because the render function gets called more than once.
Constructor, you can declare.
Oh, there is?
In normal TypeScript classes.
TypeScript.
Yeah,
So it's a TypeScript thing. So I could just add a constructor here.
And they should be able to do whatever.
Okay, that was my question.
Would I
Also,
import
do you know,
dependencies and
like
depending on
lifecycle hooks?
what you're doing.
One and it kind of thing.
I don't. Well, I'm sure they're there. They've got really great documentation. They're updating it all the time. They also have a Slack group that's really active, so you guys are asking questions. There you go.
Yeah, cool.
Yep. So yeah, when component loads, when it did load. The other thing I thought was really cool is that I think it was a state. Maybe it was an event. There's an on change, so you can do like an on change and on will change. So if it knows that something's going to happen, you can have something fired before it actually does happen. So it's like cool. You can add and remove classes that way. That's how I imagine myself using it. But, yeah, there it is. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Wow, timing is everything. You said it's like alpha as far as
Ionic 4 is alpha. Like,
oh,
they won't even share the link. Like, you can find it. But
okay, what I understood you to say is the stencil with Iconic is alpha.
the Ionic part is alpha.
Yes.
But Stencil is like beta right now, and it's
Right.
fairly stable. Yeah.
Right. So going to the integration with the Iconic tools for mobile development, do you have any view to that?
So you can, and that's actually the last slide in my presentation.
Your
Yes, my presentation. So we got to go back to my presentation and see where we find it. Where is it? Oh, it's this one here. That's right. Come on now.
reset. What about the arrow on the bottom? Or the arrow keys?
Well, this is just an image,
Oh,
but for whatever reason, is that the last of my slides? Oh, it didn't load the rest of my slides. So I'll have to show it to you. So to add a stencil component into Angular, or React, or any other library or app you're currently using, I'm going to show you the way to do it in Angular. It'll be different for your app if you're not using Angular. You do an npm run build, and it'll build your files into an app folder. So if I have this stencil app, that's not it. Temporary file. So inside my app, I have this www folder. Is that it? Yeah. And then inside here, I have this app. You probably would want to do a clean build. I think this is a lot more stuff than it needs. Basically, you'll copy these two folders. You'll put them inside probably like an assets folder for your Angular app, and then you'll want to load that in as the HTML. You just load the one app.js. So I'll load this file in on my Angular app. Personally, I would just do that in the index file. And then for Angular apps, you have to add this custom element schema to each one of your modules. As an import from the Angular core, and then as a component, and then as the Angular imports. And then you insert the component inside your app, and you can then add bindings just like I did here. I mean, I wrote them as strings, right? But you could add Angular double curlies to input all the data in there. I have the detailed steps here. This guy actually has a nice repo that you can follow. If it'll let me click. If I had internet. GitHub.com/this guy's Angular stencil. I'll share this presentation on the Meetup if you're interested in doing that. But yeah, any other questions?
that's awesome.
Cool.
Hey, make sure you go and grab some more food. We got plenty. If you're hungry, if you're thirsty, get some drinks. And we'll get Clint set up. And
Great. Good job.
hey, by show of hands, who all is interested in a chair massage?
Oh, for sure.
Left for sure. Yeah, just so we get an idea of, because we're just going to be quietly rippling through who we can get through till 8 o'clock. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
All right.
Nice job. Where's your phone?
You got to there. Ready to build a stencil out.
Okay, so I don't have any cool Ionic stuff to show, but Todd asked for volunteers last week in one of our meetings to present. And
Hey, the server stuff is critical, like we talked about.
Amazon Web Services on the table, so that's where I spend most of my day, is doing stuff on AWS. So Todd suggested that I kind of go over the best ways to use Amazon for free. So we hear a lot about people who've tried to use Azure or AWS or Google Cloud, and that first month they get dinged like $75. I do quite a bit on Amazon, just even for my personal stuff, and I think the biggest bill I've ever had is like $6. So, and that's after my free 12 months was over. So, I'm going to kind of go over ways to do it for cheap. If you guys are building web apps, you got to have a place to host them, right? So let's jump in here. Okay, so Amazon Web Services, hosting on the cheap. So the reason I went with Amazon is because Amazon, as far as the free stuff goes, has much better options than any other cloud service out there. I think Google Cloud was like, I think they gave you like a month for free. It's been a while since I looked at it. And then Azure, I couldn't even figure it out. Like it was such a mess. So, and I'm not a Windows guy, so I could care less about Azure. So I use Linux for just about everything. So Amazon is very Linux friendly. There are some restrictions to Amazon. The first one is you have to have a valid credit card. It sucks, but it's true. If you go over it, they are going to ding you. If you're using something that's not included in the free tier, they are going to ding you. This is one of the problems we've had at MTech is we've got high school students who don't have credit cards, so I'm sign up for AWS, so we're going through those things right now. But it's I don't know why, but not region specific. I was doing this while I'm working today, so I apologize. There are certain regions that aren't restricted with it, or that are restricted, excuse me. I know China is one. There's a few others too. I think there's one or two in Europe that are restricted. And it's for new customers only, which obviously makes sense. But as far as the free services go, that are included in the free tier, I just wanted to kind of highlight some of them. AWS EC2, which is their Elastic Container, or Elastic Cloud Compute. These are your servers in the cloud, essentially. 750 hours of T2 Micro, which I think is 2 virtual CPUs and 2 gigs of RAM. Don't quote me on that. But it includes, with that, you can use pretty much any operating system you want. Windows 2012, 2016, Linux, Red Hat, and Celeste if you guys are interested. So, and Amazon has their own build of Linux, which I actually like. It's built off of CentOS 7, so it's solid. And then Amazon relational database service, it's 750 hours again of the DB2 Micro, which is the same size as the EC2 instances. And it gives you 25 gigs or 20 gigs of storage and 20 gigs of backups, so they're separate. But, and then S3, which is cloud storage. I'm sure you guys have all heard about S3 outages that wreak havoc on the web. So 5 gigabytes of standard storage, 20,000 GET requests and 2,000 PUT requests. AWS CloudFront, which is really nice for hosting like static content. If you've got like the front end is static, your back end is running on Java or Spring, whatever. You can use CloudFront to serve up your statics nicely. And then EBS, which is the Elastic Block Storage, 30 gigabytes of storage. This is all monthly, so these reset monthly. And a gigabyte of snapshot storage. And then Elastic Load Balancing, which includes their classic application and their new network load balancer, which I haven't actually touched yet. But the classic load balancing is basically just round robin. The application is actual load balancing at the application level. And that includes 15 gigabytes of processing data, and then 15 LCUs, which, if you guys are interested, I'll let you guys look it up because it's really hard to explain. But then Amazon has a bunch of resources that are always free, even if you're not in the free tier. AWS Lambda is probably the biggest one. I use this thing. I use Lambda for everything.
Sorry, you say even if you're not in the free tier?
Yeah. So 1 million AWS Lambda requests, which is a lot. AWS Lambda, if you guys aren't familiar with it, is their serverless computing. And I'll show you guys an example in just a few minutes. But 1 million requests, especially if you're working on a project on the side, or even some big projects. 1 million requests, that's a lot. It is limited to how the execution time is limited, and I want to say it's 90 seconds. So your entire script has to execute within 90 seconds, otherwise it will throw an exception there. So, but with the 1 million requests, you get a total of 3.2 million seconds of execution. And then KMS again, which is very nice, that's their key management service. It's nice for generating keys to use to encrypt custom operating system images. You can use it to generate temporary keys to temporarily grant a service or role access to some service that it may need or some file that it may need. And then code commit, which is their version of Git. It's not great. It's very limited in its functionality, but if you need code on Amazon that you need to pull down into other instances, into some EC2 instances, or if you're using Chef to get your environment set up, you could just mirror them over to code commit, leave them out there, and then pull them in when you need them. Because there are certain limitations with like their pipeline. You can only access or any of your repositories. They either have to be stored on S3, GitHub, or code commit. So like if you're using Bitbucket, you can't connect to it. If you're rolling your own Git server, you're running Git or something, you can't. There's no way to connect to it. So you'd have to mirror it over to code commit, or push it to S3 or something. So SNS, this is their simple notification service. Basically just email delivery. Use it at your own risk. It's a pain to set up. It's a nightmare to set up, but it works really well once it's set up. And then CloudWatch. This is another big thing, especially if you're using Lambda. And I'll show you why in just a minute. But 10 custom metrics and alarms, 1 million API requests, and 5 gigabytes of log data and archive data. So there's a lot of great resources that are always available for free on Amazon. And a lot of stuff they only charge you, like OpsWorks, for example. You guys use Chef at all to do environment setup? I don't recommend it, but we use it, unfortunately. So they have a tool called OpsWorks, and or a service called OpsWorks, and it basically acts as your Chef server to keep your environments set up properly and configured properly. But OpsWorks is totally free. You're only paying for the resources that OpsWorks is using, and that's the way a lot of features are on Amazon. A lot of their services are free, but the services that they interact with are not. So you just kind of have to be careful, but there are a lot of great options out there. So the key to staying free, though, is knowing and understanding what the limits are. You can read the limits all day long, but if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't understand what's happening, it's really easy to get dinged. I tell people who are getting new into it, if it doesn't say free tier eligible, don't touch it. Because it will tell you, like they mark everything, free tier eligible, free tier eligible, free tier eligible. So if you look for those, you'll stay free. And pretty much everything is designed to run a month at a time. Like your 750 hours, that gives you, that's 24/7 for 30, a little over 31 days.
Hey Clint, for a concrete example, in case anybody's getting really scared about trying any of this without getting some big bill, they'll notify you if they see your resources or your usage is going to cost something. They'll notify you
if you set it up.
If you set it up?
By default, no, they won't.
By default, okay.
But you can set it up that way, and I'll show you guys how.
But then, if you're not doing anything, if you're out there learning and tinkering around and just doing a few things, but no one's really hitting the site and hitting thresholds, that's happened to me. I'm just messing around, setting other things up, and I get a bill for like $15 a month or $16 a month. So we're not talking boom, empty your bank account stuff. It's still, it makes, I shut it down, turn around and shut it down when that happens.
And they have limits in place, some default limits in place to kind of help curb some of those problems. It's not perfect, but like a T2 Micro, for example, that's on the small end of their servers. That's mostly what I use, because for what I use it for, that's plenty. I've got Nginx running on mine now on Amazon, and then I've used some reverse proxy stuff, and I've got some small Docker containers and stuff that I'm running. Nothing major, but it works great. the big thing is you need to watch out for is on your EC2 instances, because these are the things you're going to use the most. So every time you start and stop an instance, it's going to round up to the next hour. So if you start an instance for 15 minutes and shut it down, that's an hour. So if you start 3 instances in 1 hour and shut them all down within the hour, that's 3 hours of usage that you've used. So you kind of have to, then this is what I say, like knowing your limits and understanding the limits. These are some of the things that people get, they don't realize, you know. There's a few ways to track your usage. In the billing and cost management console, there is a top free tier services by usage table, which will show you what services you're using that are in the free tier and where you're at on your limits. You can also, and this is what Todd was talking about, you can enable your billing alerts. And once you enable your billing alerts, that enables you to create billing alarms. By creating billing alarms, you can actually get notified. You can set your threshold. You know, if I want to get notified if I'm going to go over $5, it'll tell you the minute. It'll shoot you an email as soon as you get close to that $5, or as soon as you go over that $5. But you can set it as low as 1 penny. So the minute you go over, the minute you're going to get billed for anything, they're going to notify you. The important thing to note is all of the billing metric data is stored in US East 1, which is their main hub in North Virginia. So you'll find that a lot of stuff is focused in that North Virginia region. You know, like when, what was it, 8 months or so ago, S3 went down and took Hulu and everything else down with it, it's because they were running all of their stuff off of their North Virginia region, and it was the S3 service in North Virginia went down. So a lot of people focus on that North Virginia region. Another key is to preserve your resources by, one, minimizing setup time. You can use that by building your stuff into containers, Docker containers. I'm a huge Docker fan, so another option is user data or CFN, which is there's scripts that you write that get run on boot up. So you can create them, add them into your instance when you're starting it up, and it will automatically, you know, if you want to do a YUM update, do a YUM update. If you want to, you know, pull down some Dockers, run those Dockers. If you want to clone system from S3 to run inside of those containers, you can do all that automatically. As soon as it spins up, we'll start that process, kick it off, and yeah, that way you don't have to tunnel in every time or RDP in if that's what you're doing, and you know, set them up manually. It's all done for you. And then AWS Lambda, and I'll show you why I talk about this a lot, because Lambda is awesome. So this is a script that I run. Well, I'll show you how I run it just a little bit. But so Lambda supports, let's see, C#, Java, Node, I don't know which versions, and then Python 2 and 3. So I'm a Python guy, so I'll choose Python pretty much any day over anything. So I wrote this in Python. It's just a simple script. And I'll show you how it gets called here in just a minute. But this is the meaty part of it right here. So it uses the AWS SDK, which for Python they call it Model 3, and it creates a Model 3 resource for EC2 in the US West 2 region, and then essentially it looks at the tags, and if it sees a shutdown true, a tag named shutdown with a value of true, it'll shut that instance down when this function gets called. And then I do the same thing for startup. And you'll see I've got an instance tag startup equals true, then it will start it up. It ignores Oxford instances. And the reason it does that is because you can't just shut down Oxford instances through the EC2 console. It's a little complicated than that. But let me show you how these. So let me show you how these get called. So this is my start instances. Right? Pretty straightforward. It's exactly what you just saw, minus the comments that I ripped out. But again, I wrote it in Python 3. You create your handler to call your to call your methods inside of your code. And then I schedule it, and I schedule with CloudWatch. So you can see here, I'll just jump into CloudWatch. Yeah, okay, so this is my stop instance of it. You can see when you create it, give it a schedule. You can do a fixed rate if you want, like cron expressions. And then just pass the Lambda function that you want it to call. So I have this called, it actually calls it 11 o'clock. It looks like it's 6 a.m., but it's because it's Greenwich Mean Time. Everything on Amazon is Greenwich Mean Time. But so 11 o'clock tonight, this will shut down my instance. And then I do the same thing with start instances, and I start it up at 7:30, I think, in the morning. And yeah, I only start my servers though. I don't remember. I have the shutdown and the startup days changed. I don't remember what it is, but I use it for some reverse proxy stuff. So and my wife does as well. So kind of do some maybe with that, make sure she can also use it. But yeah, Lambda is a great way to save on your resources because one, it's free. As long as you keep under that million requests, and that 3.2 million seconds. And Lambda has access through Botto to pretty much every Amazon resource there is. And their Botto 3 library, their SDK is rock solid. It's awesome. I haven't touched any of the other ones for Node or Java, but their SDK for Python is pretty slick. So yeah, if you guys are building web apps, obviously. So
What are some other super common uses of the Lambda functions? Like in an app?
So I've heard that Netflix. So Netflix, just so you guys know, you guys may already know this, but Netflix is probably, well, it is the biggest user of Amazon. They're massive. But I've heard that they do some of their encoding and decoding with Lambda. So I'm not sure how that works with the 90-second limit because
It's actually 300 seconds.
Is it 300 seconds?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't remember. So I've never hit the limit before. So most of the stuff, I mean, if you're doing stuff like that with Lambda that's pushing 300 seconds, it's probably not the best place to be doing it. So. But I think you are right, though. 300 seconds sounds right. Yeah, that's sounds right. But yeah, so there's a. I'm trying to think what some things are. Updating RDS, for example, if you're spinning up a new RDS instance and you need to put data in there, Lambda is a great source to drop that data in there and do the initial set up your credentials and your that sort of thing.
A lot of REST API stuff.
Yeah, a lot of REST API stuff. Yeah.
And you got 300 seconds.
No, that's not necessarily true. To use Lambda directly, you've got to use their API through Botto or some other AWS. If you want to use the gateway, that is not free.
Yeah.
There's no free tier on the gateway.
So Lambda gateway access?
It's just the gateway service, and it allows you can put that in front of anything.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome, but
That's not good.
you're paying for bandwidth 100% on that. And anyways,
So
that part's not true.
So that's processing data coming in and out of your app?
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about? Okay.
Yeah. There's
The other good one is Alexa skills. All my Alexa skills are in Lambda.
Yeah,
That's probably the most popular platform for Alexa skills.
I can see that. I haven't done anything with it, but
It's easy. Alexa, in their setup, you can connect right to Lambda.
I don't use Alexa. So, I have Google Homes in my house.
Yeah.
But yeah, you are right. So anything, if you are using the gateway in front of it, which is an awesome resource to use if you're working on something that's an enterprise level app or something, something that could really benefit from it, and the cost is not an issue. Then yeah, the the gateway option is great. I haven't used any of the other SDKs. Like I said, I know they have an SDK for Node. I'm sure they have one for Java.
They do. Every supported.
So
there's one for Ruby.
Not a Ruby fan, but
You use Puppet, don't talk to us.
I know, right? No, I use Chef, which is basically Ruby, and I hate Chef. So
That's not Ruby's fault.
it's not Ruby's fault. But when I have to write Ruby blocks of code, it is Ruby's fault. So, but yeah, so Lambda, as far as keeping your resources in check, Lambda's a good option because you can schedule and forget about it. As long as you're tagging your instance properly, as long as you're. I mean, and there's other ways of doing it, but you could have to shut down every instance regardless of the tags. I just, if there's ever an instance that I may not want to shut down, I just leave that tag off. No big deal. So, any questions?
Anybody else on the side that hasn't had one?
Gotta be somebody when you guys down that side. We're working our way that direction. All right.
Anybody want to say?
Okay, we might get Clint down there.
Well, I'll take seconds.
Was it? Yeah. All right, thanks, Clint.